The lights fade in, the music builds softly from the background, and the camera slowly pushes forward as if inviting viewers into a moment that will soon explode across the internet. Welcome back everyone, and thank you for joining us again. If you love extraordinary voices, unbelievable talent, and the kind of performances that people talk about for years, then make sure you stay with us until the end, because what you are about to witness is one of the most shocking and magical moments ever seen on a talent show stage. Let's begin. Tonight's story starts long before the audition. Far across the ocean, in a quiet neighborhood in the Philippines, a boy grew up listening to old vinyl tapes and scratchy radio recordings. While most kids his age listened to modern pop and dance tracks, his fascination was entirely different. He had fallen in love with a voice from another generation. A voice that changed the world. A voice that still echoes across time. Elvis Presley. And while people everywhere admired Elvis, this boy didn't just admire him. He studied him. He absorbed him. He lived inside the sound of his songs. Every breath, every tone, every soft vibrato and deep growl became a part of him. His family noticed it early on. At family gatherings he would open his mouth and suddenly the room would stop moving. Their eyes would widen, jaws dropping slightly, their heads turning slowly as if their ears had played a trick on them. The voice that came out of this small boy didn't match his age, didn't match his body, didn't even seem to match his timeline. It sounded like it had traveled decades to reach that moment. It sounded like the king himself. The boy didn't fully understand the power of what he had. All he knew was that he felt alive when he sang. He felt a connection that words alone could never express. For him, singing wasn't just a hobby. It was a heartbeat. His mother, a simple hard-working woman who believed deeply in the beauty of dreams, encouraged him. On their small kitchen table, lit by a single bulb that flickered every now and then, she would play Elvis songs on her old phone, and he would mimic them with astonishing precision. Sometimes she would tear up quietly, wiping her eyes before anyone noticed. She wasn't sad. She was overwhelmed. She knew her son was special. She knew he had something rare. Something that just had to be shared with the world. Years passed and the boy's voice grew stronger, clearer, richer. He practiced every night, sometimes until his voice turned raspy from exhaustion. He didn't have the best equipment, just a cheap microphone he saved up for and a speaker borrowed from a neighbor, but that never stopped him. He believed talent didn't depend on expensive things. It depended on heart, and he had plenty of that. Then one day, something happened. A friend recorded him singing at a small community event where he performed an Elvis classic. The video traveled from phone to phone, shared across group chats, posted by random strangers, and eventually viewed by people who couldn't believe their ears. Comments poured in. He sounds exactly like Elvis. Who is this boy? Someone get him on a real stage. Someone get him to America's Got Talent. At first it felt like a fantasy. A distant dream too big to imagine. But his family encouraged him. They said the world deserved to hear him. They said his voice could change his life. His mother said softly one evening, while folding clothes, "You have something special. You must show it to the world. Do not hide what God has given you." And so the journey began. The long flight, the paperwork, the nervousness, the excitement, the hope. The boy stepped onto American soil carrying nothing but a small bag, a microphone he hoped to use someday, and a heart filled with dreams. The day of the audition arrived. The sun shone brightly over Los Angeles, but inside the waiting area of the AGT theater, the air was packed with tension. Performers warmed up the voices, dancers stretched their legs, magicians shuffled cards nervously, and musicians tuned their instruments. Yet the boy sat quietly in a corner, holding his microphone in his hands like it was a lucky charm. His heart pounded loudly, but he breathed slowly, reminding himself why he was there. A staff member called his number. His moment had come. He walked backstage where the glow of the stage lights peeked from behind the curtains like golden fire. The sound of the audience murmuring, the judges talking casually, and the crew moving around created a whirlwind of noise that could easily intimidate anyone. But he kept walking. He stepped forward until he stood at the very edge of the curtain. A crew member smiled at him and whispered, "You're up next. Give it your best." He stepped onto the stage. The audience clapped politely at first, not knowing who he was or what to expect. He looked much younger in person than in the viral videos. His clothes were simple, his shoes slightly worn, and his hands trembled just a little. But then he lifted his head, and there he was, Simon Cowell, staring directly at him with curiosity. Alongside him sat the rest of the judges, each of them ready to witness what the boy could do. Simon leaned forward slightly and asked, "So, what's your name and where are you from?" The boy introduced himself softly, his voice nearly trembling from nervousness. He explained that he came from the Philippines and that he grew up listening to Elvis Presley. Simon raised an eyebrow with polite interest. "Singing Elvis, are you? That's a big name to take on. Big shoes to fill." The audience murmured in agreement. The boy simply nodded. He took a deep breath. The music began. A hush swept over the audience like a wave. Every pair of eyes focused on him. The first note hadn't even arrived yet, but something about the atmosphere felt magical. Then he opened his mouth. And the world stopped. The first sound that came out was so rich, so deep, so unmistakably Elvis-like that the audience gasped audibly. People leaned forward instantly, their faces shifting from curiosity to shock. The judges froze. Simon's face changed completely, his mouth parted slightly, his eyebrows lifted, and he stared at the boy like he had just seen a ghost of rock and roll past. The tone, the timbre, the warmth, everything was eerily similar. It didn't sound like an imitation. It didn't sound forced. It sounded natural, pure, authentic, as if Elvis himself had been reborn inside this young Filipino performer. With every line, the audience grew louder, cheering mid-song, clapping rhythmically, shouting in disbelief. Some even stood up long before the song ended. Camera flashes flickered like stars across the room. Simon slowly leaned back in his chair, placing his hands together under his chin, watching closely, trying to understand how such a voice existed in someone so young. Every judge looked stunned. The boy didn't miss a single note. His voice carried emotion and soul far beyond his years. The entire performance felt like a time travel portal had opened right on the AGT stage. As the final note echoed through the room, the audience erupted into a thunderous standing ovation. The cheering was deafening. People shouted, "Wow, oh my God, no way," and some even yelled, "He sounds exactly like Elvis." Judges stood up. Cameras zoomed in on every expression. The boy stood in the center of the stage in complete disbelief. Tears began to form at the corners of his eyes as he saw thousands of people cheering for him. Something he never thought possible. Simon Cowell looked completely blown away. He slowly stood from his seat, clapping vigorously. His face was emotional, impressed, and full of admiration. When Simon stands for you, you know it's something extraordinary. When the crowd finally settled down, Simon took a deep breath and spoke. "That was unbelievable. I was not expecting that. The moment you started singing, the entire atmosphere changed. You didn't just sing an Elvis song, you captured the soul of Elvis. You made everyone in this room feel something incredible. You are a true talent." The boy covered his face in disbelief. The audience screamed even louder. Another judge added, "I genuinely felt chills all over my body. You transported us to another era." Another judge said, "You are something special. Absolutely unforgettable." Simon then looked at him again with a warm smile and said, "You know what's coming." The audience went silent for a split second, then burst into screams. Simon Cowell reached for the golden buzzer. Time slowed. The camera panned dramatically. The boy stared in shock, unable to move, unable to understand what was happening. Then, Simon pressed it. The golden buzzer exploded in a waterfall of confetti raining down around the boy. The crowd screamed louder than ever, rising to their feet once more. The boy dropped to his knees, overwhelmed by emotion. His hands covered his face as tears streamed down his cheeks. He couldn't believe that a dream he once whispered only to himself in a small home in the Philippines had just come true on one of the biggest stages in the world. His mother, watching from backstage, burst into tears and clasped her hands over her mouth, shaking from excitement. Crew members surrounded her, congratulating her, giving her hugs as she cried with joy. Simon walked up onto the stage, placed a supportive hand on the boy's shoulder, and said something quietly to him that melted everyone's hearts. "You deserve this. Your voice is a gift. Never stop singing." The boy nodded through tears, unable to speak. The confetti sparkled around him like golden stars falling from heaven. The music swelled. The cameras captured every angle of this unforgettable moment. That performance didn't just break the internet. It shattered it. Millions of people watched it within hours. Comments flooded in from all over the world. This gave me goosebumps. The reincarnation of Elvis is Filipino. I cried listening to him. Simon's reaction says everything. This kid is unreal. Even longtime Elvis fans admitted they had never heard anyone capture the King's sound so perfectly, yet still make it his own. People replayed the video endlessly, trying to believe their ears. News outlets wrote articles about him. Radio hosts discussed him. Musicians praised him. Talent scouts took notice. He became a global sensation overnight. But the most beautiful part wasn't the fame. It was the message. Dreams can start anywhere. In a small home. In a humble neighborhood. With nothing but an old speaker and a heart full of passion. Talent doesn't require wealth. It doesn't require perfect circumstances. It only requires belief, dedication, and courage. His story became a symbol of hope. A reminder that no dream is too big, no stage too far, no challenge too impossible. And his voice proved that sometimes, the world needs to hear something so extraordinary that it gives people chills, reminds them of legends, and touches their souls. He didn't just sound like Elvis. He honored Elvis. He revived Elvis. He made millions remember why music matters, why talent shows exist, and why dreams should never be abandoned. And so the boy who once practiced alone in a small Filipino home now stood as a global star. His performance became one of the most talked about auditions of the year, and fans around the world eagerly awaited his next appearance. The journey didn't end with the golden buzzer. In fact, it was only the beginning. More performances were coming, more surprises, more moments to break the internet again. But no matter how far he would go, he would always remember one thing, the moment he opened his mouth on that AGT stage and made the world listen. The moment Simon Cowell stood up in shock. The moment the golden buzzer turned his dream into reality. And that moment changed everything. If you enjoyed this journey and the story of this extraordinary young Filipino artist who stunned Simon Cowell and sparked a global sensation, make sure to stay with us for more unbelievable stories, more jaw-dropping performances, and more emotional moments that remind us why music is so magical. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep believing, keep dreaming, and never underestimate the power of a voice that comes straight from the heart.